Aloha and welcome to our video on chemical formulas. Today we're going to interpret what a chemical formula is, and we'll also give you some examples of naming them, specifically binary compounds. Okay, so let's start by talking about chemical formulas. A chemical formula is a shorthand way of telling you what's in that chemical or what that is that we're looking at. So let's do a real simple example first, and we'll look at water. Now you could simply, every time you wanted to talk about it, write out water, but we can also do its chemical formula using its symbols and some subscripts. The first element that's in there is hydrogen, and we have two of them, and the H is our symbol for hydrogen. And that little subscript, this one down here, tells me that there's two atoms of hydrogen here. And then the final part of our formula is going to be to add in that oxygen, and that's going to be this one here. So our formula is H2O, and what it does is it tells me that I have two hydrogens and one oxygen. Now, if we look at the other molecule, this one over here, we see that it's a little bit larger and there's a couple more things attached to it. If we notice, there's some big blue molecules. If we were to count them, that's going to be carbon, and there's going to be 6 of them. Then if we look around, we'll notice these little black orbs here. That's what our hydrogen is going to be this time, and it's going to be 12 of them. And then finally we have our oxygens here, and there's going to be 6 of them. So this molecule right here has a formula of C6H12O6, and that tells me it's a sugar, and in fact this one here is glucose, and we'll be talking an awful lot about that one as our year progresses. Now sometimes you're going to hear the term radicals come up every once in a while. What a radical is that's when you have a group of atoms that are bonded together, and they like to be bonded together, and they behave as their own individual group. So they'll stay together throughout a chemical reaction. One of the more common ones is this one right here, this OH that you see down at the bottom. That is our hydroxide. Okay, and that's an OH. It has a negative charge to it. And here it's paired up with barium. So we have BaOH, barium hydroxide, and then this little subscript 2. And remember that subscript 2 tells me that I have 2 hydroxides attached to the 1 barium here, so it looks this way. Some other common ones you can see over here. We have sulfate, the SO4, chlorate, chlorine, and 3 oxygens, nitrate, a nitrogen and 3 oxygens, carbonate, a carbon and 3 oxygens, and finally phosphate, which is a phosphorus and 4 oxygens. And these ones here, when you see these written in an equation, they'll generally behave as a group and they'll stick together. Okay, let's take a look at naming real quickly. The easiest ones to name are what we call our binary compounds. And what the binary tells me is that there are 2 atoms is all. Okay, so we'll have 2 different elements is all that there's going to be there. And when we're naming them, there's 2 simple rules. The first part is we take the name of the first element in the compound. So if we look down at our example here, our first element is going to be barium. So that's going to be the first part of our name. The second name in a binary compound is the second element, but then we change the ending to this IDE. So if we have barium plus oxygen, we make barium oxide down here. And you can see in the chart here that for a lot of them, you can see how we change. And it's just that second name, we just change it a little bit. So chlorine goes to chloride, iodine goes to iodide, bromine goes to bromide, and oxygen, like we saw, went to oxide. So pretty easy to name a binary compound. You take the first element, call it just what it is, and then you add the second one and add the IDE, the I to it. So what happens if I have more than 2 elements here? Well, that's where it gets a little bit confusing. If you remember back to our discussion, we talked about those special groups, the radicals. They can make it easy. If we take a look over here, we have our molecule here. Remember the little subscript tells me that I have 3 of these groups attached to it. So this one here is pretty easy to name. We take the first element here, and that would be aluminum. And then we add this radical name, and if you remember, that was the hydroxide. So we have aluminum hydroxide would be the name of this one. We're not going to go into a whole bunch of this. The reason being is you'll do this in chemistry. So just wanted to show you that we can have different names. And remember, we saw our big guy earlier, our C6H12O6. Now, to name that would be almost impossible, but what we call that one simply is going to be a sugar. And in fact, we called it glucose. So some of them will have special names for them as well. Okay, well that's it for this video. Good luck in the lessons and we'll see you in the next video.